Right, Alan. So good first lesson there. And given that it is the first lesson, obviously we didn't really focus on any one thing in particular, so we are kind of just bouncing around. So I said in this video I'd just give you a few sort of general P's and Q's, kind of housekeeping stuff, just to kind of keep it on the straight and narrow, and then we'll, as I said, get a bit more focused in the next time. So with the chords, I think we've got most of the basic ones anyway. So like let's say if we take E minor to G. So generally speaking, you want to be, as I said, right up to the fret wherever possible. Obviously, now with E minor, for example, this one, your first finger has to be back here to make room for the middle finger. But when you're changing up to the G, let's say, which is a fairly common chord to come after E minor, first thing you should do is get that first finger right up to the fret. Then these two are easier to reach. Then the same is true for C. Like you don't want to start C down here only to have trouble reaching those frets there later on. You want to be right up there, and you can get them all. So generally, you have your finger curved out the way. For the basic stuff at least, you want to avoid bending your finger in the way like that. It should always be kind of a general curve outwards, and the tip of your finger should be pretty much 90 degrees to the fretboard, pretty much perpendicular, so coming straight down. Because if it's leaning, of course, one way or the other, it'll be fine on the one it's down on, but the next one it's going to be touching it, right? So, and of course, plenty of pressure. Now, the main thing when you're in the early days is changing from one chord to the next quickly, right? That's probably the most difficult thing. It takes the most work, but as well as that, it's among the most important things as well, with the exception of, in my opinion, of rhythm. So if you've got a list of chords there, so what you could do is, you don't even necessarily need it to be in the form of songs, but I mean, songs are ultimately just a string of chords plus lyrics, right? Bit of a simplification, but you know what I mean. But you don't have to look at a song. You can just take four random chords. Most of the basic ones sound pretty good together anyway, and then line them up and play them one after the other, just going back, forward, chord, chord, chord. That's the bulk of your time practicing should be spent on that, ideally, just to get that muscle memory there. Now, when you're changing, there's a couple of little P's and Q's there as well. If we take G to C, for example, which is a very common one, common combination, what tends to happen a lot of the time is people will come from the G and they'll go to the C like this. I'll show you that again. So they'll do this, down here, boom, boom. Now the problem with that is that, number one, it's happening in stages, right? So ideally you want all your fingers coming down on their respective strings at about the same time, which is difficult at first, right? But it's that's kind of the ideal. That's the goal you want to go for. Another thing as well is, so try to avoid doing chords in stages like that. Try to have it all coming down at the same time. Now, if you need to slow that change down to a crawl in order to be able to do that, then fine. That's grand. You'll get faster at it. And because you're doing it in the most kind of energy and movement efficient way, as you get fast, you'll eventually get much faster than you ever would have doing it like that, right? Now, another thing is try to minimize movement. Okay, do everything you can in the least amount of movement possible. So that being the case, if you look at your third finger here, right, from the G, it's going to the third from the third fret on the first string to the third fret on the fifth string. So there's no reason for it to come down here. Okay, it's difficult, as we were saying. Your fingers will do an awful lot of things that you're not telling it to do at first, right? But just again, if you consciously really have a look at it, slow it right down. This is coming over here, and as that's happening, these two are coming down to their respective spots, and boom, there it is. Back again, back again. So you don't necessarily even need to strum it. I mean, I would recommend strumming it at least once just to make sure you're getting it out right, but just one, two, you know, just chord, 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 right? Because you're never just playing a chord, right? You're always going from one chord to another. So that's chords. Line them up, play them one after the other. Now, there's all that type of thing where you're kind of nitpicking, you're really looking and analyzing exactly what you're doing, making sure there's no wasted movement. That's all well and fine, but definitely don't obsess over that stuff. It's it's important, but what's more important is just doing it over and over and over and over and over again. Okay, from one chord to the next. So main thing is think about what you're doing, but play. So then the other few things we did were the little things to kind of spice things up. Hammer-ons, pull-offs, and slides. So, for example, you could do something like this. So that's first string, third fret, pull off, and then on that same string, 3 to 5. So, but again, we didn't do anything particular. I just showed you the technique. So, with the idea that you would, just kind of mess about with it. What would happen if you slid up 3 frets and then did a pull off? It's about just kind of feeling your way around the instrument and getting familiar with how it responds to different things that you're doing with it. So, just move about it. It's just kind of it's a nice way to break up the monotony of doing chords over and over again, right? Just to kind of um, hammer-ons, pull-offs, all the rest of it. Just for now, just mess about with that stuff. I wouldn't be too worried about it. But main thing, chords over and over again. All right, that'll do. I'll see you next week.